You may have heard of Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, but do you know who he is? Well, the truth is, no one knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is, except for Satoshi himself. If you do a Google image search for Satoshi Nakamoto, one person will come up consistently as the face of Satoshi Nakamoto. However, there's a great chance this is not Satoshi. So what are the origins of Satoshi? Well, in October of 2008, there was a paper published entitled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. This became known as the whitepaper for Bitcoin. Later, in January of 2009, Satoshi released the first Bitcoins on the network. Along with founding Bitcoin, Satoshi also founded the forum bitcointalk.org. And along with creating it, he also had the first post on the website. There are many instances of Satoshi using different forums to speak about his coding projects. However, in 2011, Satoshi seemed to simply disappear into thin air. No one could find him. That was the last instance that we have of a known communication by Satoshi Nakamoto. This brings up the question, who is Satoshi Nakamoto? There are several different theories on who Satoshi could possibly be. And why did he exit cryptocurrency? The first theory is that Satoshi decided that his creation was done, and that because it was already being used and being progressed by other nodes on the network, that his work was done. Now, it's also important to note that Satoshi has over 1 million of the 21 million Bitcoins in total supply. So many people think that he just faded away with his Bitcoin supply and will let the network flourish on his own. Another theory is that he basically took the money and ran. He made so much money in Bitcoin that he just retired and moved off somewhere and quit coding and is now a billionaire. And he doesn't ever want to be found or have anything to do with Bitcoin ever again. There is a third theory that Satoshi is dead. We will look at several different people who could possibly be Satoshi, and you will come to understand that there are a few of these candidates who are unfortunately deceased, some under suspicious circumstances. A fourth theory says that Satoshi was never one individual person. It was always a group of people. A fifth and final theory, this one you might want to put your tinfoil hats on, is that Bitcoin was created by either time travelers or artificial intelligence that created the network on its own. While ignoring the fourth and fifth theories, as both of those I personally feel are far-fetched, we will focus on the first three theories being possibilities, because all three of these theories have to do with Satoshi being an actual person, a person who we can identify. Let's look at the candidates on who could be Satoshi Nakamoto. We will first start with Dorian Nakamoto. This is a picture you have probably seen before. He is an interesting fellow. In 2014, there was an article published in Newsweek magazine suggesting that Dorian Nakamoto, born Dorian Prentice Satoshi Nakamoto, was in fact Satoshi Nakamoto. At first glance, it seems as if this would make sense. However, with the priority that is placed on privacy and anonymity by Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, one would stand to reason that a person would not use their own name when creating and developing this project. For privacy and anonymity reasons, that this person might want to do this under either a different kind of screen name or at least not in their own name. But there are some reasons to think that this could be Satoshi. He was a physicist at Cal Poly University. He worked on many classified projects. He has experience in both finance and also in computer engineering. He was a noted libertarian who did not like government control. The strongest piece of evidence for Dorian Nakamoto being Satoshi himself is that the author of the Newsweek article, journalist Leah McGrath Goodman, says that when she confronted Dorian about being the Bitcoin founder, he said, "I'm no longer involved in that and I cannot discuss it. It's been turned over to other people. They are in charge of it now. I no longer have any connection." Now, it seems as if that would be very strong evidence. Later on, Dorian Nakamoto said that he was confused about the question and actually believed that she was asking him about some classified work for military contractors, or possibly his work for Citibank. Another candidate is computer scientist Nick Szabo. Nick Szabo is known for his involvement in many different areas. He's considered an expert in many different fields. One thing Nick Szabo is known for is coining the phrase, no pun intended, smart contracts. Back in the 90s, Szabo created a paper called BitGold, which actually is very similar to the ideas of Bitcoin. Was BitGold actually used as an idea to create Bitcoin? Or was this a further extension of Nick Szabo's idea of BitGold? Did he take BitGold and turn it into Bitcoin in the 2000s? Personally, I would have to say no. I do not believe that Nick Szabo is Satoshi. There does not seem to be enough evidence that he actually could be Satoshi, other than the fact that he's a really smart guy and has worked on digital currency before. He himself has heavily denied being Satoshi and says he is used to it. It happens a lot. This is where we get into some of the real candidates, in my opinion, to be Satoshi. And as you notice, I didn't totally rule out Dorian Nakamoto from being Satoshi. And the reason for that is because I do not believe that he is Satoshi. However, he does play into another theory about who Satoshi could be. So in some way, he could be involved, knowingly or not. So to me, Hal Finney is definitely a candidate to be Satoshi. However, he died in August of 2014, not under suspicious circumstances. Hal Finney actually died of complications from the disease ALS. So unfortunately, we will never know for sure out of his own mouth whether he was Satoshi or not. So Hal Finney is noted as the first person to use Bitcoin, file bug reports, and make improvements to its code, which is a little suspicious. Well, he was the first person other than Nakamoto Satoshi himself. So interestingly enough, he also only lived a few blocks away from Dorian Nakamoto's family home. A comparison of Hal Finney's writing compared to Satoshi Nakamoto's came as the closest possible match. The writing analysis consultant company, Juola and Associates, made that note. Is it possible that Dorian Nakamoto and Hal Finney worked on Bitcoin together? Is it possible that Dorian Nakamoto was nothing more than a pseudonym or a patsy for Hal Finney's project? Hal Finney was also involved in the cypherpunks. The cypherpunks was a group that focused on privacy. This is a quote directly from the Cypherpunk Manifesto. Privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. Privacy is not secrecy. A private matter is something one doesn't want the whole world to know, but a secret matter is something one doesn't want anybody to know. Privacy is the power to selectively reveal oneself to the world. Hal Finney was known to be a regular poster within the cypherpunks, so it stands to reason that Hal Finney's values regarding privacy would mean that if he were to create Bitcoin, maybe he would want to stay private about it, which would give him reason to lie when asked, and also to use someone else's name while working on the project. Dorian Nakamoto's background seems to make it possible for him to be Satoshi Nakamoto. It stands to reason also that Hal Finney, living only a few blocks away from someone with the exact same name that was used in Bitcoin, knew this. So is it possible that Hal Finney used Satoshi Nakamoto's name on purpose without him knowing it in order to make it seem as if he was Satoshi? He probably knew the background of Dorian Nakamoto and could easily pin it on him. However, that also doesn't seem likely. I believe the most likely scenario for Satoshi Nakamoto is that Dorian Nakamoto and Hal Finney worked on this project together. As soon as Dorian Nakamoto was discovered to be part of the team working on this project, I believe he pulled out of it, which would have been why he made that statement to that reporter. And later he tried to cover it up, but interestingly enough, in two different interviews, one interview he said that he thought she was asking about military contractor work, and then in another one he said she was referring to his work at Citibank. So the inconsistency when doing an investigation is something definitely to note. So in my opinion, I do believe that that is the most likely scenario for Satoshi Nakamoto. You have the cypherpunks involved. I'm not sure what their individual involvement was, the people who started that group, but that is a popular theory that people from the cypherpunks had something to do with Bitcoin. This would satisfy that notion. Also, it clears up why Dorian Nakamoto's name was involved in the project. It involves Hal Finney, the second person known to be involved with Bitcoin. It also explains Dorian Nakamoto's involvement with the project, but unfortunately, as Hal Finney has died, we will never know the answer directly from him unless Dorian Nakamoto were to eventually let us know his involvement in the project. But most likely, he would not do that. It would make sense that they would not want to be known because having an incredible amount of Bitcoin like that could be very dangerous. Now, there is another possibility. We do have Craig Wright. Now, stay with me. If you know Craig Wright, I do not think Craig Wright is Satoshi, but I want to lay an interesting theory to you that could also be another possibility. So Craig Wright has claimed to be Satoshi. A lot of people think the reason he has claimed this is to get speaking engagements or to be able to get notoriety for himself. Several times he has offered up proof of his identity as Satoshi, and in none of those times has he actually been able to produce something that would make a person believe that he is in fact Satoshi. However, this is where it gets very interesting. Computer forensics analyst David Kleiman was a person that worked closely with Craig Wright. Dave Kleiman was an Army veteran, a paraplegic, and a computing wizard. But unfortunately, just as Hal Finney, Dave Kleiman is deceased. His death was very suspicious, and it was known to be quite the grisly scene when authorities entered his room. His body was decomposing, and there was blood and fecal matter everywhere, open bottles of alcohol, and also a loaded handgun. Also, a bullet hole was found in his mattress. However, after an investigation, no foul play was thought to have been involved in the death of Dave Kleiman. Dave Kleiman suffered from the disease MRSA, and that was ultimately found to be the thing that stopped Kleiman's heart. Interestingly enough, while a bullet hole was found in the mattress, there was no casing found from the ammunition, suggesting that Dave Kleiman possibly shot the gun himself and then cleaned up the casing. Is it possible that someone entered Kleiman's house and there was a struggle and Dave Kleiman fired a bullet at the intruder and then the intruder possibly murdered Kleiman and made it look as if it were of natural causes? I mean, we've all seen that happen on movies, but does that happen in real life? I'm just not sure. But what I do know is it is very suspicious the way that he died. Which brings us back to Craig Wright. If Dave Kleiman and Craig Wright worked on Bitcoin together, if Dave Kleiman was the genius behind Bitcoin and Craig Wright played some type of role but was not actually the creator, then that would make Craig Wright quite bold and confident that he could claim to be Satoshi and no one would ever be able to prove otherwise, as Satoshi himself was dead and Craig Wright knew that. Interestingly enough, there is also a lawsuit going on between Craig Wright and Dave Kleiman's family. The lawsuit is over $10 billion. Craig Wright was accused of conducting a scheme against Dave's estate to seize Dave Kleiman's Bitcoins and his rights to certain intellectual property associated with the Bitcoin technology. So is the Kleiman family doing this in order to make Craig Wright recant that he is Satoshi? Because the $10 billion number comes from the value of the 1 million Bitcoins that Satoshi supposedly has. Or does the family know something that we don't? Does the family know that Dave Kleiman and Craig Wright actually did work on Bitcoin together? So this is also inconclusive, and as Dave Kleiman is deceased, unfortunately, we will never be able to know directly from him. I think that this is the second most likely theory. So in no way do I think Craig Wright is Satoshi. I believe he could have been part of a team that worked on Bitcoin, and now he is taking credit for his deceased partner. So ultimately, does it matter who's Satoshi Nakamoto? Is it good for crypto if we find out who Satoshi Nakamoto is? Supposedly, there is a rumor that there is a story coming out soon that could reveal who Satoshi Nakamoto is with proof. It's yet to be seen, and it'll be interesting to watch to see if this will actually happen, and then to test the findings of that report. But one thing is for sure in my mind, it's better if we don't know who Satoshi is. Because I am Satoshi. You are Satoshi. All of us in Bitcoin, in cryptocurrency, we are Satoshi. We are part of a movement. We are the early adopters. We are the ones who can see right now when no one else can see. And because of that, we are all Satoshi.